All right, folks, welcome back. Thanks so much for being with us this morning. Spend a little time with us. Having probably some of you your first sip of coffee. I want to turn now to really just, government involvement in our health care and what the government does. We have people on the left that are now promising, campaigning openly for Medicare for all. They support it. They want to take away your private insurance. And they're admitting this, openly admitting this. They also want health care for illegal immigrants. They all raised their hand on the debate stage for that a couple weeks ago. I want to talk a little bit more about this. We got a healthcare analyst, Dr. David Hogberg, is with us. He's a senior fellow at or former senior fellow at the National Center for Public Policy. He's the author of a book, Medicare's Victims: How the United States Government's Largest Healthcare Programs Harms Patients and Impairs Physicians. Dr. Hogberg, how are you, sir?
I'm fine, and please feel free to call me David.
All right, David. I will. I'll take you up on that. I appreciate you coming on, sir. Just tell us a little bit about this.
Oh, my God, it's early.
It is. What time is it where you are, sir?
It's 7:30.
7:30. Okay. Well, so what can you tell us about this book, and what made you want to write it?
Well, I wrote the book actually quite a few years ago, but it's still available on Amazon.com. And basically, what drove me to write it is that when folks on the left promote single-payer health care here in the U.S., they always talk about Medicare for all because Medicare is a very popular program. But it's still a government program. I figured it must have some pretty serious problems, and so I just started, looking around for patients and physicians who have had trouble with Medicare, and I started looking at how widespread some of those problems were, and just sort of one thing led to another, and eventually, it came together in a book.
So most people would say, well, especially on the left, but the way the program is built is, I know this is helping people. So how is it harming the patients? Let's start with the patients, because that's the whole point of the program, right? So how does it harm them?
Yeah. Well, you have to understand, if I can back up for just a second. One of the reasons Medicare is relatively popular is that it is for, people ages 65 and over. Well, people ages 65 to 74 vote at rates higher than almost any other group. So naturally, politicians are going to make sure that Medicare it works for them, because if it doesn't, they're going to feel it at the voting booth on election day. It tends to harm patients, though, that do not have that sort of political power. Just to give you a quick example, the disabled people who are disabled can go on Medicare, but for the most part, they have over a 2-year wait to get on the program. That has not been changed since they put the disabled on Medicare in the early 1970s. And, a number of disabled folks go uninsured during that period. They can have trouble meeting their medical expenses. During the debate over Obamacare, there was a brief push by some members of Congress to get that waiting period shortened, but it got pushed aside, one, because they didn't think there was the money there, and number two, the disabled did not have that kind of power when it comes to Medicare. So basically, it's patients who don't have the kind of political power under Medicare to make Congress make changes when needed.
Okay, so you're saying that and this is frustrating, I think, to a lot of people. I'm not necessarily opposed to social safety net if you truly can't take care of yourself here. If you're disabled, you're some of the most vulnerable people among us, but there's not as many of them, so you're saying they don't actually have a strong enough lobby to be taken care of.
Well, one, it's that there isn't enough of them. Two, they don't vote at the rates that seniors do. And three, there's so many different programs at the federal level for disabled people. I think one count said there was 100 different programs. Their efforts are scattered. When it comes to getting money for programs and so forth. Their efforts are scattered all over, as to where seniors basically have two concerns with regard to the federal government: Medicare and Social Security. It's very easy for the AARP and other groups dealing with seniors to stay focused when it comes to political power and so forth.
So we've got these people, and I want to get Actually, let's keep going. What about physicians? How is Medicare hurting physicians or impairing them?
Well, it is particularly bad for primary care physicians. They do not get the levels of oftentimes don't get the levels of reimbursement they need to meet their costs, for starters. And number two, it makes it difficult for them to provide sometimes good services for their patients, because they are not getting reimbursed adequately. So that's one way. Another way is it is often used by various Medicare is used by various powerful political interests to try to drive out of business smaller competition. The main chapter I had on that in the book dealt with physician-owned specialty hospitals, which the larger hospitals did not like that kind of competition, and they had been trying for years to basically say, if you owned a physician-owned specialty hospital, you couldn't get paid by Medicare, which would cut off a huge stream of revenue. And then they finally succeeded in Obamacare, in that basically it said any physician-owned specialty hospital created after 2010. They grandfathered in the ones that already existed, but anyone created after 2010 could no longer receive Medicare benefits. Well, that not only harms physicians, that's not good for patients, simply because patients are a type of customer. Customers benefit when there's more competition in the market. Physician-owned specialty hospitals provide more competition, they improve quality, and without more of them, patients suffer as well.
We're talking with Dr. David Hogberg. He's a healthcare analyst, to say the least. Obviously, you can tell, folks, he's got an extensive knowledge here. We obviously have this old lie, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. Like your plan, you can keep your plan. We got Democrats now who are essentially, they're almost not even saying that. I mean, Kamala Harris certainly isn't. She's saying, well, yeah, you're gonna lose your plan, yes. But let's talk a little bit about this recent commentary that you wrote, where you reported that on the big insurance companies, this Lower Healthcare Costs Act versus the Stopping the Outrageous Practice of Surprise Medical Bills Act. What can you tell us about these two bills?
Well, as far as I know, it's just the Lower Healthcare Costs Act. I mean, well, at least that was the one that I wrote about, and it's basically, if it becomes law, it could result, in fact, it will result in patients losing their doctors. That is, more patients will find that doctors are not covered by their health care plans. And what the Lower Healthcare Costs Act is supposed to do is protect patients from unexpected medical bills that result when they receive emergency care that is out of network, that is out of the network of their health care plan. But to do this, the bill imposes a price control on insurers. It forces them to pay the median price they pay for a service. So let's say you end up in a hospital and your physician comes by to check on you. If that visit is not covered, then the insurer pays the median price that it pays to all physicians for such a visit. And if you think about that, that provides two perverse incentives to insurers to get rid of their more higher-priced providers that are in their network. First, by eliminating higher-priced doctors from their networks, the median price they pay for doctor services drops. Okay, so for all the emergency services that are out of network, they now pay a lower price if they eliminate their higher-priced providers, higher-priced doctors. And second, by eliminating those higher-priced doctors from the network, those doctors become out of network. So if a patient now goes to see one of those higher-priced doctors, the insurer only has to pay them the much lower median price instead of the higher price they used to pay them when they were in network. And basically, if that happens, you're going to have more and more patients find that their doctors won't be covered under their health insurance plans. It's going to be a repeat of Obamacare when, Obamacare came online in early 2014, and many of these plans to save on costs, started eliminating a lot of their higher price providers, and people found that, oh, hey, no, I couldn't keep my doctor.
Mm-hmm. What were your thoughts on, I mean, very fascinating stuff. What were your thoughts when the president came out and, signaled that, hey, we want transparency in how these prices happen, how they decide to charge. I noticed that when that happened, some of the big insurance companies' stock prices took a big hit. That was telling to me.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, price transparency in healthcare is very important, and it's important for competition. It's important that customers know the price of their of the care they're receiving. That said, I kind of have mixed feelings. On the one hand, I'm glad he's emphasizing price transparency. On the second, I don't know, whether or not we want government trying to force price transparency. Why does it not have to force price transparency in other markets? Why is it when we go into a supermarket, the price is right there? Why is it when you go to buy a car, the price is right on the sticker in the window? And it's because basically, there's so much government involvement in healthcare that the various laws promote or result. You have the unintended consequence of prices being more hidden in healthcare. And maybe a government law forcing price transparency would work, but somehow I suspect that it's going to result in all sorts of labyrinthian regulations that the providers, hospitals, and so forth will figure out ways to exploit. And in the end, you won't really get the real price.
Yeah. I think, you raised some good points, and I appreciate your skepticism about, the government trying to force anybody to do anything. I think, though, that the line between these quote private insurance companies and the government is getting just increasingly blurry. I mean, I'm to the point now where if eventually we do go down this path of full-blown socialized medicine, that these insurance companies are going to be fine because they're just going to get jobs and become part of some new health administration. That's what I'm convinced of if we were to go down that road,
Well, I mean, you're absolutely right. The line is being blurred. I mean, every time I get into a debate with someone on the left about healthcare, and they say, well, the free market is failing, I say, we don't have a free market here in healthcare here in the U.S. We have a government mismanaged market. I mean, look how much government is involved in healthcare. I mean, there's only a few other areas, maybe education, maybe the military, where you have anywhere near this amount of government involvement in that kind of a market. And I don't know exactly what a single payer landscape would look like in the U.S., but I mean, I certainly agree with you that the distinction between private and public in the healthcare arena is increasingly blurred.
We're talking with Dr. David Hogberg, healthcare analyst. We're about out of time, Dr. Hogberg, David. But I want to give
you... Well, that's good because my coffee fix is about to run out.
Okay, good. But hey, I'll give you the last word about stuff that's going on. Just go ahead and take the last word, sir.
Well, I mean, we need less government involvement in healthcare, and we need reforms that are truly going to promote free markets. They're going to put consumers in control of and patients in control of their healthcare dollars. And unfortunately, right now, we're a long way from that.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it, sir. It's great to meet you. Love to do it again sometime, especially as this news develops. It's going to be very interesting to see what ideas people are going to be coming out with. So I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you. Dr. David Hogberg, everybody.